A complicated qualifying session for Ferrari in England, but it is nothing unexpected. The Silverstone circuit is not suited to the SF-24 seen on Saturday. Charles Leclerc was eliminated in the transition from Q2 to Q3, while Carlos Sainz finished 7th and will start from the 4th row in today's British Grand Prix. On Friday, the Ferrari drivers used two different aerodynamic configurations. Not just two different wings, but they compared the new and the old aerodynamic package, which includes sidepods and the floor. According to team principal Frederic Vasseur, the new aerodynamic package generated too many complications to be used, so they took a step back and returned to using the old configuration. However, Carlos Sainz continued to complain, not having a good feeling at all. The engineers wanted to find a middle ground that could bring benefits both on the straights and in the corners. Overall, several factors impacted Ferrari's performance in the qualifying session, resulting in such a negative outcome. The weather conditions did not favor the optimal use of the SF-24's tires. Normally, they do not put excess energy into the tire carcass, so in cooler conditions, they struggle to maintain the ideal temperature, both surface and internal. This is similar to Red Bull, which we will discuss later. On Friday, Ferrari had excessive rotation in high-speed corners, a decidedly unstable and detrimental condition for lap time. Overnight, they did everything possible to mitigate this chronic oversteer, seeking a new setup in the Maranello simulator. The aerodynamic balance was shifted slightly towards the rear to limit rear-end sliding. However, this work still unbalanced the car, leading to more understeer at high speeds. But this type of behavior makes the car more stable compared to oversteer. For this reason, time was lost in the Beckett sequence, where there are many fast corners in succession. A worse racing line in one corner results in a suboptimal line in the next turn. This partly explains the 0.4 lost in turn 2. In the first and third sectors, the damage was contained, also considering that in slow corners, Ferrari found a satisfactory balance, which, as mentioned, was lacking at high speeds. McLaren, on the other hand, did not optimize their performance on track, partly due to the car, but also due to the drivers. Both messed up their final attempt, throwing away a front-row start. The car was more oversteering at low speeds, possibly because the rear was stiffened to optimize the fast sections. In all the wide radius corners, they were very fast, a characteristic of the MCL 38 single-seater. Mercedes, in part, had a similar balance. At low speeds, there was excess rotation, but they still managed to do well in traction. In terms of suspension, they found an excellent compromise to ensure mechanical grip and make the floor work well in high-speed corners. The factor that once again seems to have made the difference for the Silver Arrows is the temperatures. The W15 takes a significant step forward when temperatures drop by a few degrees. On Saturday, remember, the track surface was less than 22 degrees Celsius. Even at Red Bull, the result was not optimized. In this case, however, the performance was limited by damage to Max Verstappen's floor, which the team believes cost about 0.3. Regardless, several points of downforce were lost, with which the Dutchman found himself a bit lost. The team noticed a reversal in balance. There was much more understeer, which seems to have been limited by increasing the front wing angle. This, of course, negatively affected the minimum speeds at high speeds. At the microsector level, we immediately notice how Mercedes did better than McLaren on the straights. This is why we can say that on Saturday, the Brackley team managed to find an excellent aerodynamic compromise, producing good downforce without paying too much in terms of drag. High efficiency ultimately widens the setup window. In the first sector, Ferrari was very solid with Carlos Sainz. At the braking of turn 3, he did an excellent job on entry but then lost out on exit. Up to that point, the SF-24 was on the level of the McLaren, just behind George Russell's Mercedes. Much of the gap accumulated at turn 6 on entry, where the Spaniard had a lot of understeer. Here, the Ferrari SF-24 of Carlos Sainz lost a lot without recovering much in the rest of the lap. We are talking about a good 2.5. At medium speeds, Red Bull seemed very competitive. In turn 8, Max Verstappen managed to keep a very tight line, while the others had to take a more V-shaped racing line. Here, Max Verstappen gained a lot, virtually going under George Russell's time. In traction, Mercedes proved to be excellent, optimizing speed along the stretch leading to turn 9, Copse, and then to Beckett's. In the famous sequence of corners, the SF-24 loses about 1/10. Significant losses, however, are concentrated at turn 14, because the drivers arrive wide on entry due to understeer. There alone, another 1/10 is lost. Finally, at turn 15, Carlos Sainz leaves at least another tenth on the table. In the last two corners, the gap then remains constant. It was hard to imagine an all-silver front row at Silverstone, monopolized by that same Mercedes that 3 months ago was struggling as the fifth force. It's the beauty of a never-static Formula One, where developments rewrite hierarchies month by month in a delicate game of compromises. Developing without ruining the car's balance is the great challenge faced by teams, and Mercedes is making a difference over Ferrari in this regard. It's impossible to talk about the English qualifying session without mentioning the big absentee of the day. Max Verstappen had an off-track excursion in Q1 that damaged the floor, losing, according to him, 100 points of downforce, equivalent to 25 to 30% of the total. A probable exaggeration by the world champion, who nevertheless managed to slip between the McLarens of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. The Mercedes 1-2 therefore lacks the reference par excellence, but not that of the McLarens, which have been vying for the role of first force for months. The Silver Arrow's front row is anything but accidental, with Hamilton and Russell consistently among the top 5 in both Q1 and Q2. It's a W15 that comes to life at Silverstone, with the cold and damp track helping to bring the tires into the correct operating window, conditions also present during the pole position achieved in Canada. Montreal, however, was a completely different track compared to Silverstone, where aerodynamic efficiency and balance are needed, along with a wider variety of corners. Historically, Mercedes boasts an excellent interpretation of its home track, fighting for the podium even during the turbulent 2022 and 2023 seasons. In general, however, the Brackley team is experiencing a significant rise, where the awareness of a residual lag behind Red Bull and McLaren does not erase the satisfaction towards a car that has changed profoundly in recent months. The changes made by Mercedes in recent months are small, but have made a huge difference. The lack of downforce was never the main problem, but rather the flaws in balance. The Brackley team went from an oversteering car in 2023 to an understeering one at the start of 2024, slowly finding a more neutral balance. The challenge then was to correct the imbalances between high and low speeds, working to make the additional downforce usable. In April, Toto Wolff pointed out how from the previous season, the car had not gained a single kilometer per hour in cornering speed, despite an increase in downforce of almost 25%, an image of a car that could not translate wind tunnel gains into lap times. The Silver Arrow now seems to have found that performance that matters, with downforce finally usable by the drivers without penalizing balance and drivability. It's a W15 capable of withstanding even the gusts of wind on the English Saturday, demonstrating that stability in yaw fundamental in high-speed direction changes when the car repeatedly changes orientation relative to the airflow. The Woking team does not go beyond third position with Lando Norris, but with the optimism of having cards to play in the race. At Silverstone, McLaren once again shows pole position potential, missed due to the inability to put together the lap at the decisive moment. Already in 2023, the British cars were able to fight for top positions on the English circuit, but compared to a year ago, the MCL-38 is a much more complete car.